Let's get this meeting started. This is a Livingston Parish Council meeting. Today is January the 14th, 2016. All public notices have been sent. This is an official meeting of the Livingston Parish Council. First item of business is call to order. I would like to ask us if Mr. Shane Mack would lead us in an invocation. Would you want to stand us?
Bow your heads. Dear Father in heaven, we come to you at this moment in time, thanking you for the opportunity to serve the people of Livingston Parish as councilman, to work with the parish president and his administration, and the other leaders of Livingston Parish, whether they be legislators, or clerk of courts, or sheriffs, or assessors. We thank you for the opportunity to work with state officials. Father, we ask that you give us the strength, the courage. We ask, Father, that you give us the energy, Father, to work hard, to serve the people of Livingston Parish, to make it a better quality of living for all, Father. We ask that you be with the sick and their families, that your will be done in their lives. We ask that you be with the needy, that they have an opportunity to seek work if needed, if they're able, Father, and that they have the opportunity to get help if they need help, Father. Father, in closing, we just want to thank you for loving us. For loving us, Father, so much that you sent your Son to die on the cross so that we could be saved, so that we could live eternity with you, Father. Father, lead, guide, and direct us. For us in Jesus Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much. Mr. Scooter King, would you be so kind as to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Salute the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may be seated. The next item on the agenda is we need to take up the election of officers. And the first item would be we need to appoint a Livingston Parish. Thank you so much. Let's get started with a roll call. Madam Clerk, would you be so kind as to call the roll?
Mr. Harris.
Yeah.
Mr. Talbert.
Here.
Mr. King.
Here.
Mr. Ard.
Here.
Mr. Garlinghouse.
Here.
Mr. Averett.
Here.
Mr. Lobel.
Here.
Mr. Mack.
Here.
Mr. Wascom.
Here. Next item is the election of officers. We need to appoint a chairman for the Livingston Parish Council.
I would like to make a motion asking the District 4 Councilman, John Wascom, to serve as councilman of the Livingston Parish Council for the year of 2016.
Is there
I
a
need
second?
I'll second it.
There's a motion by Mr. Bubba Harris, R.C. Harris, seconded by Mr. Averett, appointing John Wascom, myself, for chairman for this year. Ms. Sandy, any discussion? Ms. Sandy, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Harris.
Yes.
Mr. Talbert.
Yes.
Mr. King.
Yes.
Mr. Ard.
Yes.
Mr. Garlinghouse.
Yes.
Mr. Averett.
Yes.
Mr. Lobel.
Yes.
Mr. Mack.
Yes.
Mr. Wascom.
Yes. The next item on the agenda, is for this council to appoint a co-chair for this year.
I'd like to make a motion that we nominate Tracy Garlinghouse as co-chair.
Motion is made by Mr. Jeff Ard. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Tab Lobel. Any discussion? None being called for the vote, please.
Mr. Harris.
Yes.
Mr. Talbert.
Yes.
Mr. King.
Yes.
Mr. Ard.
Yes.
Mr. Garlinghouse.
Yes.
Mr. Averett.
Yes.
Mr. Lobel.
Yes.
Mr. Mack.
Yes.
Mr. Wascom.
Yes. The next item we need to pick up as a parish council we need to appoint council staff. The first item on that agenda would be appointing a Livingston Parish Council clerk. I'd like to make a recommendation that we get a motion appointing or approving Miss Sandy Teal as the Livingston Parish Council clerk. Is there a motion from the board?
I'll offer that motion.
Mr. Harris makes the motion,
I'll second.
seconded by Mr. Girlinghouse. Any discussion? None being, call for the vote, please.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Talbot?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Ard?
Yes.
Mr. Girlinghouse?
Yes.
Mr. Averett?
Yes.
Mr. Lobel?
Yes.
Mr. Mack?
Yes.
Mr. Wascom?
Yes. Congratulations, Miss Sandy. The next item on the agenda is we need to appoint a Livingston Parish Council deputy clerk. That position is being vacated by Miss Sandy. And so I'd like to make a recommendation that we appoint Miss Evelyn Wheat. I think she's in
District 6.
District 6 with Mr. Avery. Is there a motion from the board?
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Mr. Girlinghouse, seconded by Mr. Lobel. Any discussion? None being, Ms. Sandy, would you call for the vote?
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Talbot?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Ard?
Yes.
Mr. Girlinghouse?
Yes.
Mr. Averett?
Yes.
Mr. Lobel?
Yes.
Mr. Mack?
Yes.
Mr. Wascom?
Yes. Is Ms. Evelyn here tonight?
She is.
Congratulations, Ms. Evelyn. Cell phones by now, I hope are already off.
Probably not.
Number 8 is, again, to letting everyone know that public input will be available. If at any time you have to, if you're here to speak on any specific item, we'd recommend that when that item agenda comes up, please raise your hand and you'll be recognized by the chair to speak. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes and try not to repeat yourself, as we sometimes can drag those on a little bit. Item 9 is presentations, and we're going to leave that as a standing item on the agenda, just to give people in the community a chance to present awards, baseball teams, winners, any kind of civic organizations and accomplishments from all parish districts. So we're going to leave that on there. Tonight, is there any elected officials in the audience? Would you raise your hand? Mr. Sherman Mack, it's a pleasure to have you here tonight. Ms. Lori Lamb Williams from the city of Denham Springs, thank you so much for coming. Item 10 is the adoption of minutes for the December 17th, 2015 regular meeting. Gentlemen, you've had those minutes, I think, placed in your box, so we've been able to look over them, and if there's any questions, you know, ask them now, but otherwise, we just need a motion to adopt these minutes to have them recorded.
I'll make a motion to adopt the minutes of record from the meeting on, December 17th, 2000.
Thank you, Mr. Motion by Mr. Talbot, seconded by Mr. Averett. Any discussion? Ms. Sandy, would you call for that vote, please?
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Talbot?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Ard?
Yes.
Mr. Girlinghouse?
Yes.
Mr. Averett?
Yes.
Mr. Lobel?
Yes.
Mr. Mack?
Yes.
Mr. Wascom?
Yes. Next item is Charter Communication Services update. Is there anyone here from the audience to speak regarding the Charter Communication Services? Okay. You're welcome to come to the microphone. If you would state your name, preferably in the district that you're in, and your address where you live, and
Good evening, Jill Shoemaker, District 1, 27300 Red Oak Road. On behalf of me and about 61 other residents, we would like to get an update from Charter, which I noticed that he's here today, to see about where we're at with getting some stuff down there, so,
thank you, Ms. Jill.
thank you.
All right. I think Mr. Rustin Lejean from Charter Services.
Mr. Chairman, council members, pleasure to meet you, pleasure to introduce myself to you. I'm Rustin Lejean, Manager of Government Relations for Louisiana for Charter. And prior to the meeting, I passed out several of my cards with all my information on it. So you guys, if you need any help with anything, please don't hesitate to give me a call. Pertaining to Red Oak Road services, which I've discussed with the previous council, you know, We've escalated this particular situation up to our engineering team, to corporate. I've ridden out to the exact location with our construction people, and they've mapped it out. And, you know, the problem just lies where this particular stretch of road that is wanting serviceability, it lies about 3 miles in between each node, which would be the starting point where the line would have to be extended to for Red Oak Road. If we were to come from the north side of Red Oak, which would actually be a tad shorter than the south side, we would have to bore under I-12, we would have to get DOTD involved, state police, it would actually have to stop traffic for a while. It would just be a lot of things. But the major thing is the distance between our two starting points, where the road would lead to. And, you know, it's unfortunately right now, it's just a numbers game with how many homes are actually on the road compared to what the cost would be to build out an extension for serviceability. We have escalated it. It's been discussed. Unfortunately, it's not a local decision as far as the local chapter for our company and for construction. All of these line extension projects are something that we have to submit up for approval. And if it's more than 3 homes for a special request order, then that has to come from corporate to be approved. And we've just been told at this time this is just a extraordinarily expensive build. And I wish I had better news than that for right now, but at this time they're just alerting us that it's just a really, really tough numbers game right now as we speak. So, and I understand the frustration from the constituents. I really, really, truly do. I wish there was more I could do to help right now, but with the way the landscape of the homes and the technology, the way it's existing right now, it's just a really tough build at this moment. Are there any other questions?
The area that's around, I guess it's Red Oak.
Red Oak, that's right.
There is like room for development to where in the future there can be more houses in there that would facilitate that at the corporate level. To obviously, the more homes that you have in there, the higher it's going to move up because of the numbers game. You said yourself. There is room for substantial enough development for that to happen in the future. I don't know. I'm not familiar with the area myself. So.
Yeah, especially south of interstate.
Is there a number that you could say, hey, it would be feasible, project would be feasible at this number of residents or this number of hookups?
Yeah, I mean, there's not a specific, right now, there's not a specific threshold of homes where we could say, okay, if we reach this amount of homes, it would be a go. From what the construction team has alerted me, and these guys do site surveys every day, all day, and they do a wonderful job of it, and they're very, very thorough. As of right now, there were between about 25 and 30 residences on this road, and we don't know we don't know if we would have 100% penetration for the market. We don't know. Sure. Some of them, and another tough part that comes in is some of these residences are further back off the street to where we would have to require not only the line extension that would have to come from either node each way, which 3 miles is an extraordinary amount, but they would also require another one-off extension to some of these houses that are way back in the distance, and it just makes it really tough right now. So to answer your question about a specific number of homes, no, but what we could do is if more homes are constructed and, you know, we have a more dense population within that area, they can redo the ROI model and calculate how many homes are in there, maybe update and maybe help. But as of right now, from what they've counted, this is the feedback I've been given.
So basically what you're, oh, I'm sorry.
No, you go, Jeff.
So basically what you're saying, don't look like these residents are gonna be getting service anytime soon.
Well, the build, it just doesn't work currently. But another point I want to raise too is, you know, we're not the only provider. We don't have exclusive rights to Livingston Parish. If they would like to reach out to AT&T or DirecTV or Dish, any one of those providers, we are not exclusive to this area. You know, they can see if there's a, if one of those companies would have the better technology set up or be more willing to, pay what the cost would be for a line extension to the area.
Do you know what the cost of the project is to run the line from the south? And how long would it take you to recoup that cost? Based on the homes that actually you would be able to provide service to?
Yeah, so this isn't an exact number, but the general,
I got one more question.
okay, go ahead.
If you were able to get a list of those people that would say, promise to, hook up, would that help?
Yeah, I mean, it certainly would be escalated. I could turn that up to the construction team to say this is the market penetration we would have for the area. But with the number of homes that were counted by the team in that area right now, I couldn't say that they would make a certain difference. But the cost estimate that I was given, and I don't have an exact number in front of me, but what I was told it would be north of 120,000, and for that extension either way, for 25 homes or so, and with that number being what it is, typically what they look for is a 4-year in general return, and that it would not meet that model from what they've studied and what they've given me.
Do you have a list of a number of homes that would want the service?
I don't. But even if we were at 100% of the market, the number of homes that we counted, the construction counted on that street, it's just tough with the return model that they use.
Is that based on all services you provide, or just on cable, or?
Oh, no, that's internet, cable, telephone.
So if you had 100% participation on all products, it still doesn't justify the return?
Yes, sir.
Now, you talked about 25 to 30 homes, and I don't know if I misheard, but I thought you talked about 60 to 61 families. There seemed to be a huge disparity in the numbers you're talking about and the numbers she's talking about.
Yeah, and again, when it comes to the actual survey of the area, our construction team does a very thorough job. For this particular stretch of road that we were getting serviceability requests for, that was the number. And from where the cutoff is between the two nodes, that would be the starting points, would be about 3 miles each way.
The reason I'm asking, because it wasn't that long ago that there was where I have a business located in Livingston Parish. Your competitor wasn't servicing that area. And we got together with the businesses in that little development and committed in contract. And once we got 100% participation, then we were able to get them to provide a service. And, it wasn't 100% participation on everything. But we did get some to take the phone, and everybody took the internet and cable, and we were able to justify it. I'm just wondering, if the numbers were double what you thought and you got 100% participation, could y'all revisit this?
It's certain. Oh, absolutely. It's certain. Any information that I would get, I immediately, forward to our construction team and our engineering team, not only on the local level but more on the corporate level, because we exhaust all information and all opportunities to look at it. Yes, absolutely. That would be, if I were to be given that, we could certainly look at it.
So you're saying your survey did 30-something homes, right?
From the information the construction team gave to me, correct?
Ms. Shoemaker, you're saying there's like 60.
61 to be exact.
Okay, so, you're saying if it's truly 61, then you could revisit, I'm not gonna try to put you saying you would revisit. Can you get us 61 signatures with addresses so they can cross-reference to see if they,
We would just have to view where the other residences the constituent is speaking of.
Okay.
And relative to the area that we're talking about. But as far as the serviceability requests we were getting strictly for Red Oak Road that our construction team surveyed multiple times, the number that they came up with was half of that. So we would just need a to be able to distinguish where exactly these residences are in the area, to be able to know where relative they are to the start-off points for a line extension.
Okay. Can you supply that?
Mr. Booty.
Yes, sir. I just wanted to point out to the council, I think most of you know this, you know, in the older, when Charter and these cable companies first started, they were required to get a parish franchise in order to operate. And most parishes gave one provider a monopoly. In exchange for that, they were to provide service to all reasonable customers. Well, through the wisdom of the legislature, they now only get a statewide franchise. That does a couple of things. That takes it out of your hands. You don't have the ability to make him do anything. But it also allows other providers to come here and you get a competing price. So with that competition, there's a good and a bad. They all want the low-lying fruit on the ground. Nobody wants to reach out and take the places where it's not profitable. In the old days, the phone company had to service you wherever you are. So that's the dilemma we're in. I'm in the same circumstance. I don't get Charter where I live because we are remote. But that's the reality this council deals with.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
And
Mr.
we are under the state franchise model, that's correct, in Louisiana. Any questions, council members? Any other-
No.
Okay.
No. Any more? Ms. Jill?
I understand the Charter's not the only one there, and it is, you know, we do have AT&T in and around the area. I have contacted AT&T a couple of times. The gentleman I've contacted, which was, I guess, the representative in this area, his name is Alan Jackson. And the only thing they ever tell me was that, you know, we're sorry, we don't, you know, we're not servicing that area right now. I have went and asked them about the grant that they are receiving. And the last time I talked to them, they were talking about how they were gonna have to get, you know, the FCC to do some regulations at the first of the year. Well, now we're at the first of the year, and I contacted Mr. Jackson again, and he said that they're still having some back and forth with the FCC. Mr. Paul Sawyer with Garrett Graves' office, told me that he's also having a little bit of run-in with AT&T trying to get a straight answer from them. I have filed a second complaint with the FCC, on behalf of the Red Oak residents, in order to try to get something moving with AT&T also. So my fight's not just with Charter, you know, it's with both of them. AT&T is quite a big company, so trying to get someone to come here like we do with AT&T is kinda like pulling teeth.
You mean with Charter?
Yeah, yeah. So, where I'm at right now is I don't know what tool y'all have or what I can request for y'all to help me with, but if y'all can get AT&T and, if need be, I'll give y'all his number and y'all can harass him for me.
I tell you what, thank you, Ms. Jill, for your information. What we'll do is, take this under advisement, and let's send this over to the parish president's office, and he might be able to help us out with coordinating something with getting someone down. Getting somebody to handle that.
That sounds like a good idea.
I think there's gonna be a great relationship between this and the parish.
The first bus.
The next item on the agenda will be the Livingston Parish President, Leighton Rick's report.
That really didn't take long, guys. Thank you, Chairman Watson. I would like to ask y'all tonight to support my reappointment as Finance Director, Ms. Jennifer Myers. She's been with me for 4 years now, has done, I think, a phenomenal job with her team in our audit reports and our budget. I think she is about the best there is, and I would like to ask y'all to help me or support my reappointment.
Thank you, Mr. Riggs. Is there a motion from this board to reappoint Ms. Jennifer Myers? The motion is made by Mr. Jeff Apron.
I'll second.
Seconded by Mr. Maurice King. If I call you Scooter.
Call me Scooter. It's okay.
Any discussion? None being, Ms. Sandy, will you call for the vote, please?
Gladly. Mr. Harris.
Yes.
Mr. Talbot.
Yes.
Mr. King.
Yes.
Mr. Ard.
Yes.
Mr. Girlinghouse.
Yes.
Mr. Averett.
Yes.
Mr. Lobel.
Yes.
Mr. Mack.
Yes.
Mr. Wasson.
Yes.
Thank you,
Ms.
Council.
Myers, congratulations.
Thank you, Council. Second item, Public Works Director. I also need to ask y'all if y'all would to support my reappointment of Mr. Sam DiGeronimo. He's been also with me for 4 years. And I really don't know what we would do without him. You will soon learn he will be your best friend in administration, because he absolutely knows how to get it done and does it.
Okay, is there a motion from the board to appoint Mr. Sam,
I'll offer that motion to appoint Mr. Sam
DiGirolamo
DiGirolamo
to the planning,
to the DPW, or whatever.
DPW
so.
director. He also wears a planning hat, but he is DPW director.
So it's through reappointment, correct?
Yeah, to
Reappoint.
and this motion by Mr. Harris, seconded by Mr. Girlinghouse. Any discussion? None being, Ms. Sandy, would you call for the vote?
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Talbot?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Ord?
Yes.
Mr. Girlinghouse?
Yes.
Mr. Avery?
Yes.
Mr. Livell?
Yes.
Mr. Mack?
Yes.
Mr. Wascom?
Yes. Mr.
Thank you, Council.
DiGirolamo, congratulations.
Thank you, council. I would also like to ask you with Public Works Director, Mr. DiGirolamo, that y'all would support my raise for him of $2.50 an hour. Here, a year or two ago, we did a lot of benefit cuts. Mr. DiGirolamo forewent, I don't know the proper way to say that. He didn't take his. And so we would like to ask y'all to support at this time a raise. It is in the budget for him. So I would like to ask y'all to support $2.50 an hour raise for him.
All right. You've
I'll
heard the
offer that
recommendation. Motion by Mr. Harris, second by Mr. King.
second.
Mr. King, any discussion? None being, Ms. Sandy, would you call for the vote?
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Talbot?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Ord?
Yes.
Mr. Girlinghouse?
Yes.
Mr. Avery?
Yes.
Mr. Livell?
Yes.
Mr. Mack?
Yes.
Mr. Wascom?
Yes.
Thank you, council. Okay, well then I'll call for AT&T. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Next item on the agenda, 13, is board appointments. We'll start off with Ward 2 Water District. Mr. Gary Talbot has asked that this be on the agenda. I think he's gonna, you want,
I want to make a change to the Ward 2 Water Board. At this point in time, I'd like to remove Mr. Chevis Ball and appoint Mr. Jimmy McCoy to serve on Ward 2 Water Board. You know, Jimmy was my councilman for 8 years. He's got past experience serving as chairman of the council, chairman of the procurement board of the council, chairman of the finance committee of the council. He had served as chairman of Livingston Parish Recreation District 2, and also served on Gravity Drainage District 2. So at this time, I'd like to make a motion to appoint Jimmy as a member of Water District 2.
can we add to your motion that this term doesn't expire, it goes strictly at the pleasure
Yeah,
of?
this is not a term that has an expiration date. This is a term that those members serve at the pleasure of the council, so it's an unending term until the council wants to make a change on a member.
So we have a motion by Mr. Talbot.
Second.
I'll second.
Just want to be clear, the motion also involves removing
Yes,
Mr. Ball
Yes.
and appointing Mr. McCoy.
yes.
Okay, I'm sorry, motion by Mr. Talbot, seconded by Mr. Girlinghouse. Any discussion? None being, called for the vote, please.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Talbot?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Ord?
Yes.
Mr. Girlinghouse?
Yes.
Mr. Avery?
Yes.
Mr. Livell?
Yes.
Mr. Mack?
Yes.
Mr. Wascom?
Yes. Next item on the agenda is the Livingston Parish Council Communications District Board. For 911, I've asked that this be put on the agenda. Mr. Fred Banks has served on the 911 board for years to come. When I was on the city council, at one time, he was on the 911 board as well. His term expired September the 4th, 2015. I'd just like to ask that we reappoint Mr. Banks to the 911 board, and it is, again, it's a 4-year term.
I'll make
A motion by Mr. Avery,
I'll second.
seconded by Mr. Jeff Ard. Any discussion? Mr. Fred Banks, I believe you're here tonight, along with Ms. Lori Lamb Williams. No discussion. Ms. Sandy, would you call for the vote, please?
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Talbot?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Ord?
Yes.
Mr. Girlinghouse?
Yes.
Mr. Avery?
Yes.
Mr. Livell? Mr. Mack?
Yes.
Mr. Wascom?
Yes.
Welcome back.
Congratulations. Fred Banks? You wasn't worried, were you? Next item on the agenda is a Quality Assurance Panel Board. This board is required to oversee, I think, Acadian ambulance services throughout the parish. And the way this board is established is one member from this board is required to sit on that board. And since there's all 9 have been replaced, Mr. Averett has asked to serve on that as this board's member to represent on the Quality Assurance Panel Board. So is there a motion to support Mr. Averett?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Mr. Jaffar,
Second.
second by Mr. Talbot. Any discussion?
Just a little bit. Just kind of like.
Tab,
Hey, that's the worst thing you call me. I'm good.
call for the vote. You're getting me out of this.
Mr. Harris.
Yes.
Mr. Talbot.
Yes.
Mr. King.
Yes.
Mr. Ard.
Yes.
Mr. Girlinghouse.
Yes.
Mr. Averett.
Yes.
Mr. Lobel.
Yes.
Mr. Mack.
Yes.
Mr. Waskom.
Yes,
Mr. Waskom.
yes.
Can I just mention one little baby
We
thing?
need a,
Sure.
This panel only meets when needed, and, it's, just something for Acadian Ambulance.
Yeah, and I
It's in
didn't
our
tell y'all
ordinance.
this $1,000 a year paying board.
That is, strike that.
Don, we got another one on this board.
Yeah, I'm fixing to, exactly. There is also on that board is another appointment. It's required to have 2 fire chiefs, and serving currently on that board is Mr. Joe Krasowski. Joe's here tonight. In checking the records, one of the records showed that there was a vacancy as he wasn't there. When checking his records, he was actually appointed temporarily for some reason. So what I'm asking is that we make a motion officially to reappoint Mr. Joe to that board, serving as the other fire chief.
It's a point. I make, to make it a permanent appointment, I'll make that motion.
Thank you. And a motion is made by Mr. Gary Talbot to permanently appoint Mr. Joe till that board, till that term expires. Seconded by Mr. Tracy Girlinghouse. Any discussion? None being, Mr. Sandy, would you call the vote?
Mr. Harris.
Yes.
Mr. Talbot.
Yes.
Mr. King.
Yes.
Mr. Ard.
Yes.
Mr. Girlinghouse.
Yes.
Mr. Averett.
Yes.
Mr. Lobel.
Yes.
Mr. Mack.
Yes.
Mr. Waskom.
Yes. And again, I was wrong. This panel meets only when it's needed, and it does not have an expiration date on their appointment. So again, they serve at the pleasure of the council.
Thank you, Joe.
Next item. Thank you, Joe. Next item on the agenda is a motion to appoint member representing Council District 2, Gary Talbot. Mr. Talbot?
Prior to taking office, the previous member representing District 2 on Planning Commission, Mr. Ronnie Bailey, had turned in his resignation, I believe, Joe, in the November meeting, and, so there's been a vacancy. You know, planning is an important commission because it meets once a month. There'll be people that'll come to planning on a pre-planning meeting, you know, once a week they can come, but if you come early, in that process, you might wait 3 or 4 weeks before you get to the planning commission meeting. And if they don't have enough to make a quorum, then a developer or somebody looking for a waiver or somebody's got a problem will get put off a month. So it's very important that this board stays with all 9 members. And so in talking to the members of the planning commission, they just felt it was imperative that you had somebody that was interested in serving and that had a track record of community service, that attended their other meetings of committees that they had been involved in. So I'd like at this point in time to appoint Ms. Darla Stiegel I'd like to make a motion to appoint, thank you very much, to appoint Ms. Darla Stiegel from District 2 to serve on the Planning Commission for Livingston Parish.
Motion is made by Mr. Gary Talbot to appoint Darla Stiegel. Again, this term is on the expiration of the parish council, so evidently she can be appointed until till this term expires. So we have a motion by Mr. Talbot. Who is the second? Scooter, Mr. King. Any discussion? None being, Ms. Sandy, would you call for the vote?
Mr. Harris.
Yes.
Mr. Talbot.
Yes.
Mr. King.
Yes.
Mr. Ard.
Yes.
Mr. Girlinghouse.
Yes.
Mr. Averett.
Yes.
Mr. Lobel.
Yes.
Mr. Mack.
Yes.
Mr. Waskom.
Yes. If there's any other appointments for planning commission members, I'd like to ask y'all to either tell me now or let us know so we can have them on for the next agenda, because I know there's a lot of still appointments yet to come.
Right.
The next item is, item 15 is a personnel board appointment. I've asked that this be put on the agenda. What this is a board that is a grievance personnel committee. Anyone, employees that are under the parish president's office, that have to feel there's a need for a grievance, they can appeal to this board. This board is made up of three people. It's probably very seldom is there any activity on this board, but two of the people who serve on this board, their terms have expired, and I've sent out messages to both of them and gotten approvals, and glad to turn it over. So I'd like to recommend that we remove Mr. Wendell Pepper and Miss Jan Fairchild and appoint Mr. Kerry Carlin. He's a pastor of a local church. He's worked at Dow Chemical and has served on grievance committees before. I told him you'd probably never get called. He said, I've done this in the past. He said, I'd be honored to serve. And I've also spoken with the former mayor of Denham Springs, who's dealt on lots of civil service boards and grievance committees as well. He said he would be glad to fill the other spot too. So I'd like to make a recommendation. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, it was Mayor Jimmy Durbin to say.
One of these are gonna expire in 17, and one of these can expire in 19 to get the stagger right. We had talked about the fact, I mean, there's a
Let's put that in the motion.
Okay.
We'll have one expire.
17 and one expire, I mean, it's September 11th, 17, and one needs to expire September 11th.
Okay, let's have Mr. Durbin expire first,
Okay.
and then on the 17.
I'll make a motion to appoint former Mayor Jimmy Durbin to the Personnel Board with his term to expire September 11th, 2017.
I'll second that.
Okay, we'll do that as independent items. So Mr. Talbot makes the motion for Mr. Jimmy Durbin and seconded by Mr. Tracy. Any discussion? None being, would you call for the vote, Ms. Sandy?
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Talbot?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Ard?
Yes.
Mr. Girlinghouse?
Yes.
Mr. Averett?
Yes.
Mr. Liddell?
Yes.
Mr. Mack?
Yes.
Mr. Wascom?
Yes. So we need a motion for the second one to appoint Mr. Kerry Carlin.
I'll make a motion to put Mr. Carlin on. board.
Okay, and that would expire 19?
September 11th, 2019.
19. I'll pass that information on to Mr., and both of their contact information has been turned into Miss Sandy, so if you have to get in touch with them or feel free to. So is a motion by Mr. Averett for Mr. Kerry Carlin. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Shane Mack. Any discussion? Call for the vote, please.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Talbot?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Ard?
Yes.
Mr. Girlinghouse?
Yes.
Mr. Averett?
Yes.
Mr. Liddell?
Yes.
Mr. Mack?
Yes.
Mr. Wascom?
Yes. Item 16 is a resolution to reduce the speed limit on all roads locating in Westminster subdivision from 25 miles an hour to 15 miles per hour. This falls in Mr. Jeff Averett's district, and the roads are listed as this: A, Parliament Drive, Stonehenge Drive, Abbey Lane, Coronation Drive, Hampton Drive, Windsor Avenue, Buckingham Avenue, Wimbledon Avenue, Big Bend Drive, and that's it. I think Mr. Averett said there was complaints, and
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion.
I can make some motion to drop the speed limit from 25 to 15.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Tracy Girlinghouse. Any discussion? None being, Ms. Sandy, would you call for the vote?
Yes, sir. Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Talbot?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Ard?
Yes.
Mr. Girlinghouse?
Yes.
Mr. Averett?
Yes.
Mr. Liddell?
Yes.
Mr. Mack?
Yes.
Mr. Wascom?
Yes. Next item on the agenda is district attorney reports. Mr. Chris Moody.
Thank you. I have nothing to report. I do just want to say congratulations to all of you. You've gotten there for you, and I look forward to working with each of you. I will give you my cell phone number. You can call me day or night if you have a problem. I'm here to help.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. The next item on the agenda is a motion, we've talked, there's a motion to dissolve former committees. And the reason for this is for housekeeping, to establish that there are any prior committees that they be dissolved to prevent any confusion of any committees that this council may establish. So this will be an official act to dissolve any prior committees that the prior administration council have adopted. Motion by Mr. Talbert,
I'll make a motion, you have to dissolve the previous, the former committees of the previous council.
seconded by Mr. Jeff Averett. Any discussion? None being, Ms. Sandy, would you call the vote?
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Talbert?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Ard?
Yes.
Mr. Girlinghouse?
Yes.
Mr. Averett?
Yes.
Mr. Liddell?
Yes.
Mr. Mack?
Yes.
Mr. Wascom?
Yes. As chairman of the Livingston Parish Council, I'd like to appoint a finance committee. Our ordinance requires this. I'd like to establish a finance committee. That finance committee will be chaired by Mr. Gary Talbert, co-chaired by Mr. Scooter King. Also serving on that finance committee will be Parish Councilman Jeff Ard and Parish Councilman Tracy Girlinghouse. They've really stepped up to the plate to help work with the finances of this parish, so thank y'all so much. The next committee I'd like to establish is an ordinance committee. This ordinance committee, Mr. Shane Mack has asked and offered his services to chair this committee. So again, thank you, Mr. Shane Mack, for offering and serving as an ordinance committee. That committee will be made up as myself being co-chair. Mr. Gary Talbert has also asked and accepted to serve, and Mr. Bubba Harris. Thank you, Mr. Bubba, for serving on this committee. So this will benefit to the people of this parish. And again, if there's any other committees that you think need to be done, please let us know, or let Ms. Clark, Sandy know, and let's move forward with that. Pardon? No, doesn't need to be a motion. That's just, it's just one of the things that need to be done. I'd like to say, is there any comments from this council that I wanna open this up to the council now?
Sandy, do we need to, at this point in time, I know we're supposed to have a finance committee meeting once a month. Do we need to set it now?
That would be a great idea.
So, I mean, the next meeting will be the 28th, so the finance committee meet at 5 o'clock on the 28th of January.
Sounds good. Is there any more comments? None being? Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank you all for coming out to the first new council, the Livingston Parish Council. And with that, we just can't leave until we have a motion to adjourn. A motion to adjourn is made by Mr. Jeff Ard. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Tableau Bell. Any discussion? None being, called for the vote. Ms. Sandy?
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Talbert?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Ard?
Yes.
Mr. Girlinghouse?
Yes.
Mr. Averett?
Yes.
Mr. Liddell?
Yes.
Mr. Mack?
Yes.
Mr. Wascom?
This meeting is adjourned, yes.
Praise